because we don't know, we have no locus standi. We're really to test the jivas. We're not sure, are we actually buddha jivas, or we're definitely not nityasiddha, but we're definitely to testa. So we're just kind of stuck here right now in Hungary, the place of to test the jivas. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. Nice to see everybody here. It's so nice to have Prema-bhakti-candrika in front of us. It's just such a wonderful joy. Let me put this picture on screen in a minute. Gauragra Ganya Gana Go to Goloru Haram Gauranga Gudatama Gopyata Kolpa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachila Jachiya Tile Kakola Kahe Premananda Emona Goranga Hridoya Dadiya Bola Bhaja Goranga Kaha Goranga Laha Gorangera Namare Jai Jana Goranga Bhaje Se Hayamara Pranare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya Prema Bidana Padama Pumarta Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Madgavirapi Gopalam Srikriyat Kripaya Jari Dadaiva Sambhaya Pidva Rishe Gustat Priya Janaha Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunatha Brajabala Bapahimam Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyahevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So good to see everybody. I just wanted, before we start, just put in a little word that Vikramakeshwari Prabhu, have you ever met Leela Purushottam? Oh, don't commit suicide, please. Your wife will be very disturbed. But I have to say that your life is pretty much useless. You haven't met Leela Purushottam Prabhu. And Leela Purushottam, you would really like Vikramakeshwari Prabhu. He's like a strange guy with a beard. Leela Purushottam's also a strange person. I'm just mentioning because I've got that on you. No?
Just reply.
Okay. Krishna comes opening the window. For Balaram's appearance day this year, we're going to have a program at Leela Purushottam Prabhu's house in Czech. Maybe that's too far for you guys to go. Some of them, I don't know, but I'm just inviting, especially Siddha Hari Prabhu. You can just jump on a plane. You can be there in a few hours, you know.
Behind the corner.
We were just hoping we can see everybody, at least some of the devotees, especially Tirthakar Prabhu. And Hari Chandra Prabhu, we're going to see you there? Yes, all right. That's really good.
Nice.
That's really good. So it's going to be a nice program to meet with everybody there. And after that, we're going to be meeting with some other devotees in Golokadam, Germany. Maybe Vikram, if you can come for that, for Janmashtami? in Germany? No. Sachinanda Maharaj will be there for that, so I thought.
Natalia's gonna be there.
I have something in plan, but I just see Guru Maharaj now, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. All right. I'm just hoping, we can get some everybody's association. And Siddha Hari Prabhu's comments, I hope to see you in Govardhan for Govardhan Puja. Well, do you know, Siddha Hari, you're going to go? Oh, really? I don't know what's going to happen. We're hoping, kind of almost planning. We were just with Radhanath Maharaj, and I have to just tell you some good fortune. I took him some Govardhan Prasadam one evening about 7 o'clock in the evening. And just, I said, Maharaj, I don't want to bother you. I know you're really busy. I just want to give this prasadam. And he wanted to talk to me. We talked to almost 1 o'clock in the morning. And he was so ecstatic taking this prasadam. And he's doing a yatra in Puri during Kartik, isn't that right, Krishna Kun? You remember the Radhanath Maharaj's dates in Puri?
No,
Okay, I'll look here real quick.
I never had it.
Okay, I have it somewhere. Anyway, he's doing a yatra. Let me look real quick here. I think I've got it in the calendar. Yeah, it's starting November 15th. Now, I'm not sure about Kartik. Kartik is that Diwali is on the 12th. So that should be about the middle of Kartik. So I don't know when Govardhan Puja is, what's going to happen with that. But the 2 dates that we're really hoping to take part in is Radhanath Maharaj's Yatra from the 15th to the 22nd of November. And then some friends of ours are getting married at Govardhan on the 29th of
A
November.
daughter.
That's not her friend. Krishna Kun says she's not actually our friend. She's our daughter. That's Anupayani Radha. And some special devotee from a strange place called Ypsilanti in Michigan, which nobody can spell or pronounce properly, but anyway, it's there. So maybe we'll see you for that. I don't know. If you show up to Siddha Haripur, they may give you some prasadam, something,
And in that case, you plan for Govardhan retreat with Burijan Prabhu?
Yeah, we're also hoping to do that too, which will be
Just after Kartik, actually.
have they announced the dates of that yet? I don't think they have. Usually it's a few weeks.
But it's always like 3-4 days after Kartik it starts.
Or a week or two. Yeah, it's after Kartik. So
Yeah, after Kartik, there is Holy Name retreat from 3rd of December.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is 2 weeks.
5 days, yes.
3rd of December starting. So
Yeah.
that
Kartik
means
comes really late this year because of Purushottam.
it won't be like starting until probably the 10th of December or something, then at least.
Yeah, there is another week. There is 2 retreats.
Right. There's a week between the two. And it's going to be cold at Govardhan in December. If you go there, you better bring some warm clothes. That's all we're going to warn everybody. So let's recite this prayer to Srila Sanatan Das Thakur. Shri Krishna Nama Amrita Varshi Vatra Chandra Prabhad Vasta Tamo Bharaya Gauranga Deva Anucharaya Tasmai Namo Nama Shri Narottamaya. Again and again, I offer my obeisances to Srila Sanatan Das Thakur. He's indeed a true follower of Lord Gauranga Deva, the nectarian shower of the holy name radiating from the moon of his mouth destroys the darkness of ignorance. So we're starting today a new section of Prema-bhakti-candrika. Again, it depends on which version you are following, but we're going through mostly the edition which was published by Ishvara Prabhu, and he's calling this chapter 3, which is Atma Nivedana, and this is the first text we're going to speak about today. And this chapter, this verse, speaks something which we'll talk about today about mercy to the fallen, which is a really important subject, at least for me. Maybe not for any of you because you're all very elevated persons, but let's just look at this verse together. Tumi to dayada sindhu adama janada bandhu muri prabhu koro abadan. Padina asat pole kama timingile gile enata koro paritrana. Oh my Lord, Tumi to doyada sindhu, my dear Lord, you're the ocean of mercy. Adama janada bandhu, you're a friend of those persons who are very, very fallen. Muri Prabhu Koro Abadan. My dear Lord, please give me your merciful glance, your Abadan. Padina Asat Bole, Narottam Das Thakur says that I've fallen down into this Asat Bole, this misconception, which Kama Timingile Gile, Gile means to eat or swallow, which is just like being eaten alive by this timingila. A timingila fish is a fantastic creature which some people might have ascribed as mythology until a few years ago when scientists, they found some amazing fossils of this giant fish, which is like a giant shark, which they say used to eat whales, which is spoken in the Bhagavatam, the literatures, the timingila fish is like that. So in other words, common timingila gile, meaning that I'm being swallowed by this giant, inconceivable thing, and it's just eating me alive. E nata koro paritram. Oh my dear Lord, you're my nata. Please, koro paritram. Please deliver me. This is a prayer of Narottam Das Thakur. Narottam Das Thakur here, he's acting like a common fallen jiva to teach us, to help us to understand our position. And there's many, deep points in this verse and purport. No purport by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur this time. But this verse reminds me of one of the first verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is, I think, the very first verse I ever memorized. When I joined, I was in the temple for 1 or 2 days, and somebody came to see me and they said, "Hey, Bhakta Mark," that was my name then. They said, "Do you want to help clean up this go down?" That was in early 1982. And I went and we were helping clear out this old storage area, and I found a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila Volume 1. And I said, "Wow, this is a really old book and bad shape. Could I have this?" And they said, "Yeah, New Bhakti, you can have that book." And so they gave me that. And reading through that book, I became very attracted by this particular verse. Sri Chaitanya Prabhum Vande, Balo Piyada Nugraha Tarinanamata Graha Vyaptam Siddhanta Sagaram. Very similar to what Narottam Das Thakur is saying, that I offer my vandana to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by whose anugraha, Prabhupada translates here as mercy. Anugraha is not a perfect synonym of kripa. There's only so much you can define a word in the synonyms, but anugraha means to please someone. And so if we please Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, someone may be a bala. Bala means a small child, ignorant child, Prabhupada translates. Bala sipiyad anugraha. And even an ignorant child, tarinana mata graha vyaptam siddhanta sagaram. There's this vast ocean, which is a siddhanta sagar. It's an ocean of different theories, different philosophies. And in that ocean, there's so many different grahas. Graha means a crocodile. There's so many different crocodiles in that ocean. But if someone takes shelter of Mahaprabhu and gets his mercy, and there's a new graha pleasing him, then taranana, they can easily cross over that ocean of material existence by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So mercy is a very, very important subject. Even the non-devotees appreciate that. Mercy, and I should say, meant to say, humility. Humility attracts mercy. See if I can find it here. I have a lot of things I want to share with you today. It's really such a nice topic. There's a few things. I want to start off with something from non-devotees. Let's see. Yeah, there's a book called Writing to Awaken, A Journey of Truth, Transformation, and Self-Discovery by Mark Natalsik and Joan Borsenko. And there's a few statements they make in the book, which I really appreciated, which I felt were very similar to statements in our Vedic literature. So let's look at these together. I'll post these on the screen. When you feel humble, you don't mind acknowledging your flaws and getting creative with your limitations. Right? That's the benefit of humility. You don't mind acknowledging how fallen you are or what faults you have. And then you can become creative with your limitations. It's a great statement. Narcissists resist humility. They confuse it with humiliation. They can't tolerate that. And he says, where pride closes the heart. This is a Christian book. Pride closes the heart and it defends us from others. When we have this pride and someone says something, you should have gotten up earlier this morning. That I saw when you were chanting Japa Prabhu, you were just sleeping most of the time, this and that. And we say, no, you don't understand. I was in Samadhi. And we naturally defend ourselves. That's the nature of pride. But humility, they point out, opens the heart and it allows other people in. Whereas pride creates a wall. It creates some distance between us and other persons. Humility opens the door to wisdom and makes spiritual growth possible. It said, I've heard some sadhus say that knowledge without humility simply becomes pride. If we have some knowledge, but it's not realized, that's the point they made. If it's not realized knowledge, then it simply becomes pride. And he speaks about how not having humility may be blocking our psychological and spiritual growth. I really appreciated what they said about narcissists. For those who don't know, a narcissist is someone who's in love with himself. And they have a very difficult time appreciating anyone else. Sometimes narcissists, they will listen to you, although generally a narcissist is not interested in listening to anybody else. They want everybody to listen to him or her. But sometimes a narcissist will listen to someone else because they want you to love them. But the center of a narcissist is they don't care about anybody else. And if they do listen to someone else, it's just to get them to appreciate them. So a narcissist resists humility, and they consider that to be like humiliation, and they consider it to be like terrible poison for a narcissist. So humility is such a very important thing. So many different places we hear about this. And we're hearing here also about how Krishna's mercy is very, very vast. Krishna's compassion is very, very vast. When we come to Krishna, when we try to come to Krishna, it's like when we come to a new Sangha. Maybe some of you heard me comment on this before, but when I first came to my Guru Maharaj, he instructed me that I should come to Bhubaneswar and I should install the deities of Radha Gopinath. That was my first instruction from him after getting initiated. I was initiated before and doing pujas and things. And I immediately felt very, very nervous and very unqualified. I thought to myself, here's a sadhu, my wonderful guru, he's given me this mercy. And now I'm going to go to his place where he has this Sangha, and I'm an outsider. I'm just a new person. And I'm going to go there doing some big high-profile service, and it really made me very, very uncomfortable, because the principle is that if we want to enter into another, we want to come close to a person who's very famous. Perhaps you're friends, we want to be friends with Mr. Obama, the former president of the United States. And he has a lot of friends. You don't just walk into the group that he has and just announce, well, here I am, I'm your best friend, I'm your bestie. It's not appropriate. You're an outside person. And if you don't give proper respect to everybody in that Sangha, then how can you enter into it? So this is a general principle in life. It's also a principle in spiritual life. And we want to go to the Lord's abode. It's not that when Gopa Kumar went to the spiritual world, he just announced to everybody, what a close, intimate friend of Krishna he was, and how everybody should appreciate him. But he considered himself very, very low and very, very meek. We want to, if we want to make friends, we want to get the mercy of a great personality, we have to get the mercy of that personality's associates. So that's a very, very important thing. Krishna, his mercy toward the jivas is described as two different natures. He has Mahamaya Kripa and Sarup Shakti Moya Kripa. And the type of mercy that's manifested to the Maya Shakti, that's Maya Karuna. And that Maya Karuna is very, very great. Krishna wants to deliver the living entities in this material world. And to sustain them, he's given a whole place here, a whole carnival illusion, an illusory carnival of mirrors and things, a movie we can watch and feel sustained with nice water and air and comfortable living and the opposite sex and so many different types of sense gratification, enjoyment in this world. And there's some kindness, but ultimately this Maya Karuna Shakti of the Lord, it's meant to transform the living entity. It's his mercy, because the living entities, when they suffer in this world, then they're able to call out. And therefore, Narottam Das Thakur, in this verse, he's calling out, Adama Janata Bandhumoy Prabhu Koi Abadan, that my dear Lord, you're the friend of the fallen, and that's me. I'm so very, very fallen. So I'm a candidate for your mercy. And how does Krishna give that mercy? Krishna gives that mercy, Krishna Kripa Srimurti Sri Gurudev. He gives that mercy in the form of Sri Guru. He gives that mercy, Jiva Goswami explains in the Bhakti-sandarbha, through his devotees. I heard one lecture once of Radhanath Maharaj, and he was commenting that this is how Krishna gives his mercy. In the language of my Guru Maharaj, he once said that if you go to Krishna and you say, hey, Krishna Karuna Sindhu, oh, Krishna, you're the ocean of mercy, please give mercy to me. And Krishna will tell you that ocean of mercy is not with me, so I can't give it to you. It's with my devotee. And Radhanath Maharaj commented that if we don't appreciate devotees, it doesn't bode very well for us for our spiritual life. I mean, how are we going to get mercy from the Lord when the vehicle by which Krishna gives mercy is through the devotees, if we don't see or appreciate any devotees? So this is also what Vishaka, Prabhupada's disciple, calls the ecstasy of insignificance. Beautiful title, I like so much. We've given some lectures, we borrowed that title from her. It's from an article she wrote in BTG. The ecstasy of insignificance, and she spoke about that it means happiness through reality. That when we see reality and we can live with that. In the Yoga Upanishad, there's a couple of beautiful verses which I'll share with you, which are kind of, for those of you who've been around for a while, they're kind of old school ISKCON popular verses. So I hope it doesn't frighten anybody to death or anything. Amejapurne krimijala sankule swabhava gandhi vininditantare kalevare mutapuri shabhavite ramanti mudha viramanti panditaha. There's someone who's a mudha, someone who's a complete fool. They have this desire, ramanti, to enjoy this material body. But what is the nature of this body? Amejapurne krimijala sankule. This body is full of krimis. It's full of nasty worms. And it has very, very disgusting smelling things, urine and stool. So someone who's a pundit, ramanti mudha viramanti pandita, they give up their attachment, viramanti, they give up their attachment to this body. And again, in the Yoga Upanishad, it's described, Brana mukam eva deham buti chamavanadam krimikula sata purnamutra vishtan ulepam vigata bahula rupam saiva boga divasam dhruvamarana nimitam kintu moha pasakja. What is it, this body? We're so attached to this body, but this body has really ugly acne on it. I remember one of the most handsome young men in our school when we were in high school. He was a weightlifter, and all the girls would practically faint when they saw him. He was like a demigod. But one day he got this huge pimple, right, like on his cheek, and he wouldn't squeeze it, and it became infected and like kind of green and yellow. It looked really horrible. So this body, we may be so proud that I have such a beautiful body. But what is the nature of this body? It has acne, and it's all wrapped up in the thin layer of skin. It has so many hundreds of worms in it. It has full of urine and stool. It has so many different forms, all of which are going to be destroyed. Vigata bahula rupam sarva bogadivasam. In spite of all this, we have this desire, because of this body, because of attachment to this body, we have this desire for different types of enjoyment. And it's that attachment to the body which gives rise to mundane pride. When we identify with the body, then we think that I'm the enjoyer of everything. So the beginning of our spiritual life, in so many ways, as I was mentioning, in a higher way, if we want to aspire to enter into the association of Krishna's associates, humility is required. But even from the level of yoga, this is again from the Yoga Upanishad, these are very strong verses. We shouldn't misunderstand. Krishna Kund and I were having a discussion today. We had breakfast in park somewhere, and we sat down on the grass, and we were discussing about yoga and Varnashram and Vedic philosophy, which includes the philosophy of our Acharya Shankar, which speaks about the difference between the body and the self. And that's important philosophy, but that's not Krishna consciousness. Someone may understand the difference between the self and the body, but they're not necessarily Krishna conscious. And such a person may be a Mayavadi. Such a person may not appreciate or understand the devotees and their obsession with Krishna and Krishna's pastimes. We're not yogis like that, but at the same time, the devotees, they appreciate, they understand these principles of yoga, so much so that the Rupa Goswami, I think it's the first and third verse or something like that, or first and second in his Upadeshamrita, someone can correct me, maybe if you know, are taken from the Yoga Sutras, word for word, in one of the verses. And another verse, I think, is one or two words changed. I'd like to share with you a mundane poem that I like very much. It's completely mundane. It's not Krishna conscious, but it really, I think, has a nice purport we can take. This is from a diary of a housewife. And her name was Sarah Price. And she wrote it sometime between 1850 and 1900. So the English is a little old. And I think most of you, English is not your native language. So it may be a little hard. I may have to give a little bit of a translation. This is later, by the way, I heard made into a song by some Canadian folk musician. Anyway, in the 60s. As I was a-walking, I heard a complaining. I saw an old woman, the picture of gloom. She stared at the mud on her doorstep. 'Twas raining. And this was her song as she wielded her broom, as she swept with her broom. Life is a toil and love is a trouble. Beauty will vanish and riches will flee. Pleasures will dwindle and prices they double. And nothing is as I would wish it to be. This is reality, right? Life is a problem. Love is a trouble. Beauty is going to vanish. Riches will go away. Pleasures will dwindle. Prices will double. And nothing is as I would wish it to be. There's too much of worriment goes into a bonnet when you're making a hat, for a lady. There's too much of ironing goes into a shirt. There's nothing that's worth all the time you spend on it. There's nothing that lasts us but trouble and dirt. And then again, this chorus is there. Life is a toil and love is a trouble. Goes on. We won't go. In March, it's mud. It's snow in December. The midsummer breezes are loaded with dust. In fall, the leaves litter. In rainy September, the wallpaper rots and the candlesticks rust. There are worms in the cherries and slugs on the roses. Slugs means these big snails. There are ants in the sugar and mice in the pies. The rubbish of spiders no mortal supposes, and ravaging roaches and damaging flies. The rubbish of spiders, no mortal, spiders make their webs. Who can understand how much mess this is made, and ravaging roaches and damaging flies. It's sweeping at 6, it's dusting at 7, it's victuals, means meal, at 8, it's dishes at 9. Right after meal, you have to wash the dishes. It's potting and panning, potting different vegetables and things. Leela Purushottam can tell us about that. They have a big thing every year that they do. It's a lot of work. Potting and panning from 10 to 11. We scarce break our fast till we plan how to dine. We just barely break our fast and then we have to cook again. From floor to the ceiling and from corner to center, forever at work and forever alert. No rest for a day, lest the enemy enter. I spend my whole life in a battle with dirt. No rest for a day lest the enemy enter. This is the enemy of a housewife. I spent my whole life in a battle with dirt. Last night in my dreams, I was stationed forever on a far little rock in the midst of the sea. My one chance of life was a ceaseless endeavor to sweep off the waves as they swept over me. So she had this dream and she's in the middle of a rock in the middle of the ocean, on a rock in the middle of the ocean. And the only way she could stay alive was to take her broom and keep sweeping all the waves as they were sweeping over her. Is that the end of the poem? Oh, yeah. Alas, 'twas no dream. Ahead, I beheld it. I see I'm helpless, my fate to avert. She laid down her broom and her apron she folded. She laid down and died and was buried in dirt. And then I have to read the chorus again. Life is a toil and love is a trouble. Beauty will vanish and riches will flee. Pleasures will dwindle and prices will double. And nothing is as I would wish it to be. So this is reality. And although sometimes people, they accuse the devotees of being very depressing, it's actually sanity to understand the real situation that we're living in. The devotees like in Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sung very famously in a beautiful song, Amara Jivana Sadapape Rata Nahika Punya Lesha. He says that this is my life, Amara Jiva. Prabhupada liked this song very much. You can look this up on the web or someplace. That this is my life, Sadapape Rata. I'm always doing sin. Nahika Punya Lesha. I have no punya, I have no good whatsoever. Payera Udyega. My whole life, I've caused anxiety to everybody else. I've troubled everybody else. I've never hesitated to enjoy sinful things. And he says, Parasuke duke. When I see someone who's happy, I become depressed. I'm sorry? Maybe somebody had their mic not muted. Anyway. Parasuke duke. When I see someone who's happy, I become unhappy. Sada mityabhasi. I'm always doing lies. Paraduko sukha koro. And if I see someone unhappy, that gives me great pleasure. That gives me great happiness. This is a story of my life. So this is a very, very important topic. And in this third section of Prema-bhakti-candrika, Narottam Das Thakur is beginning to speak about saranagati, or surrender. But surrender begins with reality. Bhakti begins with reality. And this is a big difference between religiosity, and spiritual life. That in religiosity, people are attached to doing certain rituals and to being a good moral person, but they're not actually necessarily being real. Whereas in spiritual life, we begin by announcing our fallen position. And Jiva Goswami, again, in Bhakti Sandarbha, speaks about this in Anucheta 209. He says, Milito pina labhyeta jiva ahamika parai. He says that those persons who have pride, they don't attain the Lord, even if they encounter the Lord. And there were many demons who got association with the Lord. This is a verse he's quoting from Prema-bhakti Purana. He says that the verse describes Guru Bhakti Samiliti, that through Guru Bhakti we attain the Lord. Smarat Sevyate Buddhai, and an intelligent person is Buddha. Smaranat Sevyate, he serves the Lord by remembering him. But those persons who are very proud, militopi, nalabhyate, they can't attain the Lord, even if they personally meet the Lord. Pride is such a very, very unfortunate thing. And so later on in Anucheta 236, again, Jiva Goswami quotes Brahma-vivarta Purana, and again is speaking about the nature of pride and the importance of humility. I'll put this verse on the board here. He says, Ahankara nivritanam keshavo nahi duraga. That for someone who's ahankara nivrita, who gives up their ahankar, gives up their pride, or the sense of ahankar, this is me, then they can very easily, Keshava Nahi Duraga. Nahi Duraga. Duraga means something very difficult, but to attain Krishna for that person, Keshava Nahi Duraga, it's not difficult. But ahankara yutanam hi, for someone who has this ahankar, yutanam, madhye parvata rasaya, it's like there's a huge mountain range between them and the Lord. And therefore we were commenting on this, these quotes from these Christians who wrote this book about the importance of humility, that humility creates a wall between us and others. And ultimately pride creates a wall between us and others. And humility breaks that wall. And in fact, that when we have that pride, it creates a wall, which is like a mountain, madhye parvata rasaya, between us and the Lord. So if we want to begin our spiritual life for so many reasons, it's essential that we adopt some sense of humility, which again is simply reality. And Rupa Goswami speaks about this extensively. So many places our acharyas speak about it. In Punjabi, Rupa Goswami gives a whole section of verses, which maybe I'll share one verse with you, which defines what is karpanya, what is humility. But also Sanatan Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita gives some beautiful verses, which I don't think we're going to go into today. Just not so much time, but it's such a nice subject. This is a big topic. We could speak about this for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's a very, very important subject. And again, the narcissists, they think that humility is something which is depressing and is something, something against them. They think like that. And therefore they can't deal with reality. They become their pride doesn't allow them that. So anyway, in text 66 of his Pajavali, Rupa Goswami gives the following beautiful verse. Parama karuniko nabhavat paraha parama sochatamo nachamat paraha iti vichinja harimai pamare yad uchitam yadunata tad achara. He says that my dear Lord, there's no one who's more merciful than you. Parama Karunika, you're the most merciful person. Na bhavat para, no one is more merciful than you. At the same time, Parama Socha Tamo Nachat Paraha. There's no one who's, the translator gives a beautiful word, pathetic. I like that word very much. Socha means to lament or to cry. But he translated no one who's no more pathetic than I am. If you don't know the word pathetic, I suggest you look it up. It's a really beautiful word. Let's see, maybe I have a dictionary handy here real quick. I can give you a dictionary definition. If I can find my dictionary. I'm not finding, there it is. Oh, it's not it either. Let me find it quick. Well, it's kind of quarreling with this. Come on. Okay, there we go. Okay, so pathetic is defined as arousing pity, especially through vulnerability or sadness. And he gives a sentence using the word pathetic. She looked so pathetic that I bent down to comfort her. It was a pathetic sight. Another meaning for pathetic is someone who's miserably inadequate or of a very low standard, and they give a sentence. He's a pathetic excuse for a man. His ball control was pathetic. So it comes from the Greek word, it says pathos, which means suffering, someone who's really, really suffering. So the translator, I really like that how he gives his word. There's no one more pathetic than I. Parama karuniko na bhavat paraha, my dear Lord, this is your nature. There's no more merciful than you. And parama sochitamo nachamat para, there's no one more pathetic than I am. I'm very lowly, I'm fallen. So therefore you should please think about my case. And you should do whatever is appropriate. In the Harinam Chintamani, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Haridas Thakur once sung that Amito Adama, Tumi Adama Tarana, Ubaye Sambandha E Patita Pavana. That Amita Adama, this is the definition of me, Amita Adama, I'm fallen. Tumi Adama Tarana, and I know who you are. You're the deliverer of the fallen. Ubaye Sambandha, this is our connection, that I'm fallen, you're the deliverer of the fallen. My dear Lord. So Jiva Goswami, going back to him again, in Bhakti Sandarbha, when he's speaking about humility, now we've jumped back a little bit ahead to, we've read before from Anucheta 236, This is now from Anucheta 270. And he speaks about kirtan. Let's read some of this. I'll put this on the board then. Very, very beautiful thing. We should really study the writings of our Goswamis. They're giving their mercy through these writings. And if we don't study their writings, how are we going to get their mercy? Iyam cha kirtanakya bhaktir bhagavato drabhyajati guna kriyadbhir dina janaika Vishaya para karuna maiti shuti puranari vishrutihi kalocha dinatva yata brahma vivarte. And then he quotes a verse from Brahma Vivarta Purana. And he says that that this bhakti, this kirtanakya bhakti, it gives unlimited mercy to the devotees who are dina janaika, who feel themselves very, very humble and who don't have any sense of pride. Vishaya para karuna maite. This pride which comes from vishaya, from being attached to my position, my wealth, my bodily beauty, and different things. And so he says, this is something which is discussed in many, many different places. He says, but this humility, locha dinatvam, it's natural in Kali Yuga. This is a symptom of Kali Yuga. If you're a natural person, it's natural to be humble because everything's going wrong all around you. And then again, he quotes from Brahma Vivarta Purana. By the way, for those of you interested in the literature a little bit, Brahma Vivarta Purana is a little controversial. It's considered to be interpolated a lot, but Jiva Goswami quotes it quite a lot. This is a little note. Atakalo tapa yoga vidya yagnadika kriyaha sangha bhavantina kriptaha kushalar api dehi bihi. That in Kali Yuga, different activities like penances, tapo, yoga, vidya, yagya, study of the Vedas and sacrifices, nobody can do it properly. Even as someone who's very, very competent, they can't do it. He says, atta eva, therefore, kalosa bhavata eva tidanishu lokesh avibhuyatan. He says, therefore, in this age, Sankirtan has appeared. A mix of people in Kali Yuga. Because people in Kali Yuga, they're being beaten down so much. And because they can't do yagya, they can't chant mantras properly and things. I remember I mentioned a little earlier that I used to do yagyas and things for my Guru Maharaj. And somehow he liked it, and I did some things, and we put on a show. That's what I thought of it as, which was pleasing to the public. But once someone asked me to do some ceremony, which I don't do these things anymore, please, but someone asked me to do a grain ceremony or a namkaran or something for their son, and Fakir Mohan Prabhu was there. And Fakir Mohan Prabhu was a Sanskrit scholar. He used to teach Sanskrit. And I remember, my God, I just wanted to hide that I was trying to do this thing. And I remember he actually just left. He could see that this whole thing is just a joke. This person can't pronounce things. He doesn't understand things properly. Then that's the nature of Kali Yuga. We become a little bit humble because we can't properly do. We think, yes, I'm going to be a brahmachari. And my brahmacharya, that's my key to success. And many devotees thought like that. And many of them ended up getting married. And some of them took sannyas before they got married. Some of them got married after they took sannyas, and some of them got married 2 or 3 times after they took sannyas. And they became very humbled, and they could understand then that it's very difficult to do this in Kali Yuga. This is not the process. And therefore, Sankirtan appeared amongst the people. Ivada Dineshu Lokesha Vibhuya. It appeared to the people in Kali Yuga who are naturally humble. And this is the Maha Sadhana. This is the great practice. If someone practices this, they can get all the results. Sarvam eva phalam dadana ta kritartayati, sarvam eva phalam, and get all the phalas, all the fruits of all the different sadhanas from other different yugas. Ata eva tayaiva kalo bhagavato visheshatascha santosha bhavatiti. And for this reason, Krishna is especially pleased in Kali Yuga only by the performance of Sankirtan. And then Jiva Goswami quotes from the Chaturmasya Mahatmya of Skanda Purana, Tata Chaivottamam loke tapa Sri Hari Kirtanam Kalo Yuge Visheshena Vishnu Prityai Samacharet. That in all of this world, Chaivottamam loke, to sing, to do Hari Kirtan about Krishna, that's the best tapa. That's the best penance that there is. And Kali Yuga Visheshana, this is a special Vishesh, a special quality of Kali Yuga, Vishnu Prityai Samacharet. We can please Krishna by doing this Hari Sankirtan. So we shouldn't even bother trying anything else. As somebody, as Krishna Kun was quoting last night in her class to some of the ladies, she was quoting from Srila Prabhupada in a conversation, Prabhupada, in a lecture Prabhupada gave in 1968. And Prabhupada was saying that, what was he saying? Oh, Madhudvisa Prabhu asked him, well, Prabhupada, what about Varnashram Dharma? Do we have to follow Varnashram and all that? And how do we do that? It seems really complicated and this and that. And Srila Prabhupada replied, he said that before you joined, were you doing Varnashram? And Madhudvisa Prabhu was a little confused. And I don't know. And Prabhupada said, no, you were not doing Varnashram. You didn't come here because of Varnashram. It wasn't on the strength of Varnashram Dharma that you've come here to Bhakti. You've come here on the strength of Hari Kirtan. And it's only because of that Hari Kirtan that we have any quality, any qualification. So again and again and again, our acharyas, they recommend that we live in reality. And as Vishaka said, there's happiness in reality. It's the ecstasy of insignificance. And in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami has given a verse, Matulyo nasti papatma naparadi chakashana parihare pilajame kim puruvi purushottam. Oh, my dear Purushottam, my dear Lord. He says, Matulyo nasti papatma. There's no one who's a papi like me. There's no one, not asti, no one, not tuli means the equal. There's no one who's as sinful and fallen as me. Naparadi, there's no one who's an offender like me. Parihare pilajame, I'm so bad that I'm not even ashamed. Now, Rupa Goswami is giving us this verse, and he's feeling like this genuinely. But this is our position. We're so fallen, we're so very, very sinful, but we don't even have the decency to be ashamed of our position. And Rupa Goswami then, he teaches us that we should own this, that we should embrace this. And as we often comment on the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that it's the yoga of lamentation, or Bishad yoga. Bishad means poison, Ada means to accept. So it means to own it, as we'd say in colloquial American English, that we accept, we own that I have this fault, this is me. And generally, is when we comment sometimes about that, generally when a person becomes depressed, they become an alcoholic, or they're doing some terrible thing, they're beating their wife, they're molesting their children or something. And such a person quite often takes to drugs and alcohol to try to erase the reality where they're living. But here, Rupa Goswami is teaching us in the beginning of spiritual life, we should own it. And owning that is Bishad yoga. It's a yoga of lamentation. We practice a kind of yoga, and this comment is coming from Baladi Vidyabhushan's commentary on that first chapter, and calls it Bishad yoga. This is a way we connect with the Lord through that humility. The humility is not a bad thing. The humility is our only qualification. as my Guru Maharaj very famously used to say, your only qualification is your disqualification. And therefore, again, Rupa Goswami in his Padyavali, he gives a beautiful verse. Dina bandhur iti namate smaranya ravindra patito ham utsahe bhakta vatsal yataya tvayi shrute mama kamrida yama sukam pate. That, my dear Lord, I'm fallen. And when I remember your name, Dina Bandhu iti namate smanam, when I remember your Dina Bandhu, the friend of the fallen, then patito ham utsahe, I become encouraged. I get some utsaha, I get some enthusiasm. Like I can do this. Wow, he's a friend of the fallen. And then bhakta vatsal yatai tvai shrute. And then when I hear that you love your devotees, mama kam hridayamasu kam pata, my heart begins to tremble. Why does my heart tremble when I hear that you love your devotees? Because I'm not a devotee. This is where you give your mercy. And that's not me. I'm not a devotee. So Sanatan Goswami, as is mentioning, speaks extensively in Prema-bhakti-candrika about humility and prema. You can find it in the third section, third canto of Prema-bhakti-candrika, chapter 5, text 221 to 225. I'm not going to go through all those verses right now. We have too many verses today, I think. But he speaks about how the nature of bhakti is that it's very, first of all, he says, karma jnana yogadi sadhana duratastitam, that bhakti is very far away from karma jnana and yoga. And the root of that is dainya mulakam. The root of that bhakti is humility. And then he defines in the next verse, what is humility? Let's put that on the board. It's a really, really good verse. Yena sadarana sakta kama buddhi sadatmani savokar sanditesvi pisyad buddhais tat dainyam isyate. This dainyam isyate, this is dainya, this is humility. And those persons who are buddhi, who are wise persons, they define dainya is that mentality when someone thinks himself asakta adama, that I have no strength, I have no potency, I'm asakta, adama, I'm just a very fallen person. And they think themselves then very, very low and useless. That's humility. That's reality. And Narottam Das Thakur is beginning this section of Prema-bhakti-candrika speaking about surrender by speaking of this, because without humility, there's no question of surrender. Your so-called surrender, without humility, my Guru Maharaj used to say, without prema, your so-called humility is either artificial, partial, or conditional. But the root of that love, dainya mulakam, it's humility. And that comes when we have some understanding of reality of our situation. Therefore, again, my Guru Maharaj used to say that your only qualification is your disqualification. So he goes on to explain many beautiful things about humility. Let's just read one more. This is, he says, 3 ways that we cultivate humility. In other words, it's not necessarily something inherent within us, although Fakir Mahamprabhu gave a series of talks in which he explained to us, which he showed us conclusively through Shastra and the teachings of our acharyas, that humility, although it's something we cultivate, it's not, we have this Trinadapi Sunicchena verse, and someone may say, oh, if you're humble, then you can chant. And so someone may mistakenly think that humility is the root of everything, and humility humility is required for proper chanting. But he established that actually it's the chanting which gives humility. But the two, as Rupa Goswami, as Sanatan Goswami will establish in Prema-bhakti-candrika, are in cause and effect. So let's look at this verse. Yaya vache haya dainyam matya cha stairam eti tat tam yatnena bhajet vidvams tad virudani varjayet. So we should, if someone's a wise person, a vidvan, a learned person, intelligent, that person should cultivate humility, dainya, through vacha, through their speech. In other words, it's an exercise that we do. And we may think it's just a ritual, like our friend Vipramukhya, former Swami, an old friend of mine, who's sadly no longer practicing bhakti, but he had a good sense of humor, and he used to tell us sometimes, Prabhu, please accept my offenses and forgive me for my obeisances. Right? We have this little saying we used to do in the morning, Prabhu, please accept my obeisances and forgive me for my offenses. But he flipped it around. And I think the reason why he did that was to try to show us that many times we say that from the lips in just kind of an external way. But here the point being made by Sanatan Goswami is that vachayaya dainyam, that we should cultivate dainya through our speech. So we should think about what we say, and we should address people in a proper way. And we cultivate that in such a deep way. We were just giving an online class for the devotees in Kazakhstan. And we were speaking something about Vaishnav etiquette. And we were citing a letter from Srila Bhakti-siddhanta, where he wrote to a devotee, and he said something very interesting. He said that you should not begin your letter with the words Hare Krishna. And when I read that, I was a little struck because, of course, in our culture, that's a very common thing. I do that quite often. Hare Krishna Prabhu, we just start off with the holy name. Why not? Srila Bhakti-siddhanta explained, he says, because if you start off saying that, then you're presenting yourself as a teacher of bhakti. You're presenting yourself as a teacher of the holy name. And Vaishnavas should not do that. Although, unfortunately, it's a popular thing, isn't it, in our society to present ourselves as a teacher. And if you go on Facebook, so many devotees, they say, I'm a life instructor, life coach. I'm a this, I'm a that. And that's something that devotees do. Doesn't necessarily mean they're not humble, but it's something that devotees do to help preaching. You give yourself a title and it helps. But amongst devotees is detrimental. So we can cultivate humility through our vacha, through our words. And we do that, Prabhu, please forgive me for my offenses. And we speak in a respectful way, even if sometimes we may not even feel it. We may feel like this guy's such a jerk. He's this or that. But we should try to control ourselves and cultivate humility through our gentle words. And he says then that we should cultivate it also through matya, through our how we're thinking. We should cultivate it in our mind. In other words, we, as my Guru Maharaj once commented, he said, we should be adoshadarshi, not see fault with anyone, but we should at the same time be sarvadoshadarshi, be seeing all the faults in ourselves. So we're adoshadarshi with others, but we're sarvadoshadarshi with ourselves. So that's how we cultivate humility in the mind. We look constantly to see any faults, any shortcomings in ourselves. So vacha, in our language, ihaya. Ihaya means in the way that we're acting and what we do with our body, with our language, with our body, with how we behave with our body, and with our intelligence, with our thinking. We should cultivate humility. So how do we ihaya dainya? How do we cultivate humility with the body? By offering obeisances, by helping someone to carry their bag. I remember before I became a devotee, maybe it was the first time I'd met the devotees, I think, was at the Rainbow Gathering in Washington State in 1978. I was a hippie going there. And I was conscious a little bit about yoga, and I wanted to practice karma yoga. I wanted to help. So I used to, when I was hitchhiking, going places, I would pick up garbage and put it in the bin and things like, because I thought I'm helping to make the world a better place. I'm helping myself by doing something good karmically. And so when I went to the rainbow gathering, I would, people were coming in, it was in the middle of a forest, and they would have to hike for many miles with a heavy backpack. And so I would go where they were first coming in, and I would help them to carry their backpack. I would say, here, let me take your bag from you. And people I didn't know, and I would just carry their bag and do like that. So in my case, that was some kind of karma that I was doing for my benefit. But if we do that for devotees, if we offer to carry the bag of a Vaishnava, if we do some service like that for them with our body, then that helps us to cultivate humility. And we can think that on the opposite side, that if we refuse to do that, if we don't want to do services like this for senior devotees, then we cultivate pride. And then we avoid this opportunity that we have to become humble. We should take whatever opportunity we have to cultivate humility with our body, with our speech, with our body, and how we're thinking. And Jiva and Sanatan Goswami goes on to explain that Daima and Prema, they're in kind of a circular cycle, that one causes the other. So when we speak about this Trinadapi Sunichina verse, Kirtaniya Siddhahari, we should always chant, and that by chanting, humility will come. But at the same time, we were hearing from Bhakti Sundarbha, looking back at what we were just reading, and also in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that if we chant, if we have humility, then we'll always be able to chant. And there's another level of it. And in his explanation of these verses, Sanatan Goswami says that the gopis, they're the perfect example of this dainya. And they're the perfect example of Trinadapi Sunichina and of Kirtaniya Siddhahari. And how are they always chanting? Because they have dainya. They have this humility, and this is a kind of ecstasy in the case of the gopis. So we cultivate humility through chanting the holy names. That's the greatest type of humility. It's the greatest service to Guru that we chant. If we don't chant, what kind of humility do we have? Let's see here. There's this is the nature of a devotee. In Madhya Lila, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami says, Sarvotama apanikahina korimani. Famous statement that the devotee, although the devotee is very elevated, but still their natures, they think themselves the most fallen. That's the symptom of a devotee. And we want to have that symptom. So we want to cultivate that. As we read from Sanatan Goswami, we can cultivate that in these three different ways. Right? So that humility is really actually living in reality. And it's discussed and it's described in so many different places. I want to look again in Christianity. In the Bible, it says that in Matthew chapter 13, it says that the virtue of a humble person is like a treasure hidden in a field. So the Bible is encouraging humility. Again, in Corinthians 2:12, Jesus says that my power is fully shown in your weakness. When we can understand this in a Vaishnava way, that the Lord's power is shown by how much mercy he gives us. And in a song we often sing, Gauranga Karuna Koro Amidina Hina Jani, which is ascribed in Narottam Das Thakur. He describes that my dear Lord, Patita Pavana Nama, you're known as Patit Pavan, but if you don't give mercy to me, then how can you be known as Patit Pavan? That's your power, as Jesus says in Corinthians, is Krishna's power is fully shown in our weakness. Without our weakness, there's no meaning to the power of the Lord. But if someone's a very proud person and they don't want to own their fallen position, then what can they do? Let me read you something from two Christian saints, and it's some really beautiful statements. I'm sorry if you're so much a Hare Krishna devotee that you don't appreciate Christian saints, but I think we can appreciate wise words wherever they come. This is from St. Francis. Blessed is the servant who does not consider himself any better when he's praised and exalted by people than when he's considered to be worthless, simple, and looked down upon. That person is blessed. Who doesn't, when everybody claps their hands and says, Prabhu, that was a great class. Prabhu, you have such a beautiful home. Prabhu, you cook so well. That was such a great kirtan. Prabhu, that was such an amazing painting you made, or whatever it is. That person doesn't consider themselves any better. In the language of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he said, this is Guru. Guru is that person when he says in one place that when unlimited different people come and glorify them and say, oh, you're great, it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect their attitude of humility and their attitude that I'm just a servant of my Guru. He says, for what a person is before God, that he is and no more. Whatever we are, when we come before the Guru and Krishna, that's what we are and no more. And what is it when we come before the Lord? Therefore, we have this pastime in the Bhagavatam, Vastraharana Leela, when Krishna steals the clothes of the gopis. And for lusty people, they think, wow, this is a really hot thing. And there's many Indian paintings of these beautiful, big busted gopis taking bath in the nude, and people like that. But actually, if you look at some of our VBT paintings, they're more accurate. The gopis were like 4 or 5 years old at that time. there was no big drama like that about their bodies. But they came before Krishna, and Krishna told them that you come before me naked, and the gopis out of shyness were covering their private parts of their bodies. And then Krishna told them, you put your hands in the air. And what does that mean? Why is Krishna doing that? And one commentary we found describes, because when we come before Guru and Krishna, we come naked. In other words, we don't have any upadis, any designations. We're not trying to present ourselves as a big person. We come as we are. And St. Francis echoes this statement. What a person is before God, or we can say Guru and Krishna, that he is and no more. In other words, again, it's not just what people think of us in the institution. Oh, this guy gave a great class. He was one of the speakers at the Serbian retreat with Satchidananda Maharaj, and he's a big person. He's doing this and that. But Guru and Krishna, they understand our position. They can see us for what we really are. That is what we are and no more. Woe to that, or unfortunate it is, let's say. Woe means unfortunate it is to that religious person who's been placed in a high position by others and who doesn't want to come down by his own will. So in our religious society, we've been given some position. Someone gave us, they said, you're the temple president, because there was no other temple president. I became the temple president in Seattle because I was the only guy there. And I was doing the deity worship. I was the pujari, I was the cook, I was the cleaner, I was the banker, I was the class giver, I was everything there was. So I became the temple president. And sometimes we get some position, some high position by others, and then we don't want to come down from that. And we identify with that. It's a very, very dangerous thing. And we should understand that I'm not a temple president. I'm not the bhakta leader. I'm not anything. I have this position, but it's not a position. It's a service. It's an opportunity to render service to Gurudev and to the Vaishnavas. So my real position is whatever he tells me to do. Ayendra Prabhu was a very big person, a very, very famous person. But Leela Purushottam, who can tell you one of Ayendra Prabhu's favorite activities was to go and clean the toilets. Because everybody would come, and that was in India in the Gurukula. The Gurukula boys weren't always the most sattvic persons in the world. And Indian toilets aren't the most fragrant, nice. It's not like going to the bathrooms in the airport in New York City or something. The bathrooms in the Gurukula in India, nasty, nasty places. And in great ecstasy, he went and did that. So whatever position we get, if Gurudev one day tells us, you give class, or Gurudev may come and say, you initiate disciples. Then the disciple, the surrendered disciple, has to accept that. But then the next day, then Gurudev comes and says, now I want you to clean the toilets. We should have an equal sense of ecstasy for both. And in fact, actually, of the two, we should have more ecstasy with the toilet cleaning than we should with the position of guru, because there's different types of service. And those are hoitaki seva and ahoitaki seva. Hoitaki seva means something which is a motivation. And one motivation is we start some WhatsApp group called Pari Prashna with Madhavananda, and we become famous and we try to get lots and lots of people. And that's motivated because there's something in it for ourselves. And then we do this thing, we become famous. But there's ahoitaki seva. And ahoitaki seva means there's no motivation. Of all the different types of ahoitaki seva, the best is our chanting of japa. It's not that someone makes an announcement in the morning and we just want to, congratulate Gaura Nitai Prabhu for chanting such nice japa this morning. And Gaura Nitai Prabhu ki jai. His japa was so very, very good. Nobody does that. Nobody, they make an announcement that somebody made a big donation and gave lots of money, and everybody claps their hands. So nobody claps their hands for the person who's chanting nice japa. So of the two services that we mentioned, someone getting a position of guru, which is given to them by their guru, or cleaning the toilets, of the two, better to clean the toilets, because that's ahoitaki seva. Nobody's going to clap their hands and say anything about it, and you can have a peaceful, happy life. So St. Francis concludes then, blessed is that servant who's not placed in a high position by his own will and always desires to be under the feet of others. Now this, Prabhupada said that St. Francis was a real sadhu. Beautiful, beautiful statements. There's another Catholic saint who I'd like to just mention real briefly, tell you a little story before we finish. And this was Saint Gemma. Saint Gemma, as I recall, I don't remember from her biography, I think she became a nun at like the age of 14 or something. And she had this realization that God is everything and she's nothing without the Lord. And so she would consider herself as nothing, and she was attracted, therefore, to things that would humble her. And Saint Gemma, she had her director was Father Germanus. And he, one day, he decided to test the humility of Saint Gemma. And he told Saint Gemma, now, what would Jesus want? Why would he want to dirty himself with a cesspool that's Gemma? Now, if you don't know what a cesspool is something, if you have a natural house you built, and you have to build a toilet, that's the cesspool. It's this thing underneath your toilet. So Father Germanus addressed Gemma in this way: why would Jesus want to dirty himself with the cesspool that's Gemma? And when Gemma heard that, she became ecstatic. Now, I think if you told this to most devotees in the temple, some of them would probably break your nose. Right? They would punch you in the face. How dare you speak about me like that, Prabhu? But when Gemma heard that, she became ecstatic, and a big smile came on her face, because she found, this is what I've been looking for. She was always looking for some way to describe herself that was appropriate. Mm-hmm. And so after that, in ecstasy, she would always start praying, Jesus, why do you want to dirty yourself with the cesspool that is Gemma? That became like her mantra. She wrote an autobiography called The Notebook of My Sins. That was Saint Gemma. So we can see from this that everyone who has some sense of reality. Thank you, Tirthakar Prabhu. Sorry to see you go. It's nice to have your Sangha here today. I'm sorry we took so long. I'm just about ready to finish now. I think he'd already left. Anybody who has their head in reality can appreciate humility. And this is why you see a lot of times people get really tired of politicians. They advertise themselves as a big, big person. because if you dress yourself in a humble way, if you say that the Goranga Kuruna Kora Amidina Hina Jani Mosamo Patita Prabhu Nahi Tribhuvani, that all the three worlds is no one is fallen as me. If you come before and you advertise this in the newspaper, people won't vote for you then. Let's say, well, this guy's useless. So, but at the same time, people, they love someone who's naturally humble. Some, like in America, thinking of American politics, and I don't want to try to promote one person and another, but when Mr. Obama went to Saudi Arabia, he bowed his head before the leader there, in out of respect and humility. And some of the people in America became furious. How dare he do that? He shouldn't humble himself before that person. But many people appreciated that gesture of Obama, that although he's a president of such a big country, he has some humility. So this is what Narottam Das Thakur is teaching us in the beginning of this third section. This third section, some versions call this Atmanivedana, or self-surrender. And it begins with this first verse, which we'll put on the board again, and we'll go ahead and finish, and we can take some discussions. Amita Doyara Sindhu, excuse me, Tumito Doyara Sindhu. My dear Lord, you're the ocean of mercy. Adama Janata Bandhu, you're the friend of the fallen. More Prabhu Koro Abadan. Please give me your glance of mercy. Because Padina Asat Bole Kama Timin Gile Gile Einata Koro Paritran. I'm fallen in this ocean of material existence, and this Timingila fish, this great shark-like creature, is trying to eat me alive, this fish of lust. Einata Koro Paritran. Please deliver me in this way. So this is happiness in reality, as opposed to illusion, which no matter how comfortable it may be, as what's his name, Rabindra Swarup Prabhu commented in one article. He said that reality, however, it's something that I'm paraphrasing, but something to the effect, reality, however disturbing, is always preferable to illusion, no matter how cheerful the illusion is. We should live in reality. So this self-surrender, the basis of this self-surrender, this is the root of it here, is this humility. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. And would anybody like to offer some comments? Sometimes we call on everybody. I don't know, it's kind of a nice thing to do, but it's also, I don't want to pressurize anybody. Anybody have any reflections or comments? Mataji, you want to share something?
Yes. I wanted to say about this humility, which it was the focus of your today lecture. I realized that when I was not in this humility mood, I did many wrong things in my life. And now I'm a little bit scared about being proud and doing, bad things. How to balance this? Is it healthy? Is it okay to be afraid of being proud?
Please be afraid of being proud.
Okay.
That's very healthy. And what can we do if we've made so many offenses of so many devotees? Because I was a big person. What comes to my mind immediately when you said that was Jagai and Madai. And there's a place in Mayapur called Madai Ghat. And after Madai was delivered by Lord Nityananda, then Madai, he realized, I've offended so many devotees. In fact, I've offended so many devotees that I don't even know who I offended. I can't even count them all. So what can I do? I should go to the feet of each devotee and beg forgiveness, but I don't even remember who all I offended. And so then Madai decided he would make a ghat, a place for people to bathe. And he would just sit there in that ghat, and he would offer obeisances to all the Vaishnavas. Today we arrived in Budapest, and one very gentle, sweet devotee whose name better we don't mention, but Gorni Taipabu knows him. He was waiting. He actually got on the train 2 stops before us, just to meet us. And he was just there to help us with different things. He got a new SIM card for my wife and some different things, and for her phone. And as we were parting, we were discussing something, and he started to cry. And it was really genuine tears. And he said, Prabhu, I have no good qualities, and I've done everything bad. And I have so much lust and different things, but if I can just serve the Vaishnavas, if I can just serve the devotees, and he really meant that, and he really lives that. And your comment reminded me of him, and it reminds me of Madai. And this is the attitude that we should have. Now, someone may say, well, it's a fact that offending a Vaishnava is such a dangerous thing. We hear in Bhakti Ratnakar that even inadvertently, Rupa Goswami apparently offended one devotee. It wasn't even conscious. He just laughed because he was seeing a pastime of Radha Krishna in his samadhi. And one devotee who was lame, couldn't walk, was there, and he became offended. He thought, oh, he's laughing at me. And Rupa Goswami lost his Leela Spurti because of that. And Narahari Chakravarti comments that there's no fault in Rupa Goswami. In fact, there was a fault in that lame devotee who couldn't walk because he was criticizing Rupa Goswami. But to teach us how dangerous it is, how dangerous Vaishnava aparad is, how careful we should be. And he says, Mahaprabhu arranged this pastime, and then Bhakti Ratnakar Narahari says that we should be careful not to hurt the heart of any Vaishnava. So when I think of this subject, I think of Madai, Madai got, I think, well, maybe Madai wasn't successful. How could he be successful? Maybe some people didn't want to go and bathe there. Maybe some people were so angry with him because Madai raped their daughter or something. They didn't even want to see his face. To think that Madai was able to offer obeisances to every person he offended is not realistic. It really can be when you hear about what he did, but we don't hear that there was any insufficiency in his attitude because he had this strong desire in his heart, and he was doing the best that he could to offer obeisances and beg the blessings of all the Vaishnavas. I saw that in real life in Fakir Mohan Prabhu in a way you can't imagine. He was a professor of Sanskrit, one of the most learned people in all of India. My grandma said he knew more about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Orissa than anyone on the planet. And he was the most humble person. He would go to every devotee, including children, and say, please bless me, with tears in his eyes and sincerity. And he just won everybody's heart. That's what's important, that we get the blessings of the Vaishnavas, not that we become a big person. So thank you. Anything, was that okay? That helpful? Vikrama Prabhu, do you have anything you want to share?
You mentioned that humbleness attracts Krishna's mercy. And in previous programs, you said that the Kripa or Karuna is fully manifested in the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he's in the mood of Radharani and there is no limits. But in Krishna's appearance, the limit, the Karuna is not fully manifested because of his Icha Shakti, Icha potencies. So if you could say a few words about this, because I did, maybe I could understand it better.
So we know in the Upanishads, it's described that so it was Sarvasya, that the Lord has unlimited different potencies. Prasashakti Vividaya Vishruyate. He has unlimited different potencies, one of which is his Icha Shakti, his desire potency. And with that desire potency, he hides his Karuna Shakti, his mercy potency. That mercy potency is there in the personified form of Radharani or Sita Devi, whatever expansion, whatever form of Radharani appears in the Lord's pastimes. And therefore, as we often comment, you may recall, Manavalama Muni in his commentary on Valmiki Ramayana, he explains that why it is that Lord Ramachandra had to kill Ravan when Sita was not present, because Sita is the Karuna Shakti. And if Sita would have been there, she would have stopped him. She would have said, no, don't do this. He deserves some mercy. Just like we hear that when Ashwatthama was going to be killed by the Pandavas, Draupadi, whose 5 sons were killed by Ashwatthama, it was Draupadi who stopped them, because Draupadi is also a manifestation of that Karuna Shakti. So generally, that Karuna Shakti is hidden by the Icha Shakti, because otherwise, if everybody has an opportunity, has access to the Karuna Shakti, then everybody will get mercy, and there's no reward, there's no justness going on in the world. Whereas this universe is being run by Lord Vishnu, and everything is very just. And if somebody, according to the degree that someone surrenders, according to the degree that someone is pious, they get some particular benefit. Yegatamam prapadyante tam sutaiva bhajamyaham. But to teach us that, especially in Kali Yuga, that there's no, we have no hope with our sadhana, with our pious activities or anything. Krishna himself comes to teach us what Sarva Dharma Parityaga means. That Sarva Dharma Parityaga, to completely surrender, means to surrender to Krishna's devotees. Not just to Krishna, but to surrender to the dust of Krishna's feet, which is Krishna's devotees. And in particular, to surrender to Srimati Radharani. And therefore he teaches us this dainya. And Mahaprabhu is crying and crying and feeling himself the most fallen, the most unqualified person. So that's the symptom of great mercy. When someone has that mercy, they feel that they don't have it. And then they can get that. And to teach us that particular point, that Krishna himself came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Yes.
It's a beautiful song. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Anybody else want to share anything? Mila Purushottam, Prabhu. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I will again make it unnecessarily complicated, but still I have it in a mind and on the heart, so I have to express it. I'd like to ask you on because all the quotes that we've heard today, and being it Vaishnava source or a Vaishnava source, was, as I could understand it and interpret it, was about the genuine humility, meaning something real in your heart. But among the endeavoring sadhakas, we very often meet with something like, like pretended humility. Like they get a credit to know that humility is something what we want to achieve, but it's not theirs. It's like they pretend humility very much. And I would like to ask your opinion. Like, one could explain it with formulas like fake it till you make it or something like that. But in the field, on the field of sadhana, I really don't like this. This conception. Somehow it just doesn't fit to me, to progressive part of devotional practice. And I myself, I'm definitely not very famous for humility, but maybe it's because I knowingly avoid to pretend something that it's not mine. And when I meet with it in the dealings with the devotees, I find myself often like disturbed or annoyed, sometimes even feel like, like embarrassed, like awkward in a situation when it's not genuine, when it's just pretended. Could you help me with any thoughts on it?
Yeah. We have to be constantly endeavoring to find something genuine in our heart. The problem is it's covered with so many layers of dirt that we can't find what's in our heart. We can't see what's in our heart. And therefore, Chetodarpana Marjanam. But to facilitate us, to help us, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Chaitanya Siksamrita, he recommends planting trees. He recommends digging wells and making bathing places. What is the necessity? What is the benefit of that? That has nothing to do with bhakti from one sense. It's certainly not any of the angas of bhakti. But if someone does it, for example, if you travel from Bhubaneswar to Jagannath Puri, you'll find along the road used to be these huge trees which are planted, some people say by Maharaj Prataparudra. They were all cut down a few years ago during Navakalavra when they widened the road, sadly. But anyway, they planted new trees, fortunately. But they planted all those trees there. And you'll find there's also wells periodically along the way. There's also bathing places because the road is a very, very hot road, especially in the summertime. And the pilgrims, when they're going, they stop and they sit under the shade of the tree. If it's a fruit tree, they take some fruit. They have some water to drink. They have a place to take bath. And you get some piety from that. And people who are looking for piety can relate to it. But why does Bhaktivinoda give it? He's not interested in promoting piety. But what if one day a Paramahamsa, Vaishnav, comes and sits under that tree, or drinks the water from the well that you dug, or takes a bath in the pukur that you built? Then you get some bhakti umukhi sukriti. You get some kind of bhakti. So in a similar way, for people who are still very external and want to practice Varnashram Dharma, which Varnashram Dharma is for people who are very external in general, and it's not a wrong thing. Prabhupada said we should encourage it. We want that. And sometimes we define Varnashram as, Prabhupada seemingly defined it as being self-sufficient, as growing your own food. But it's more than just that also. And the essence of that Varnashram is humility and respect. It's a culture of respect. And we learn to respect women, we learn to respect our parents, we learn to respect senior persons and older persons. And Manasanhita says we respect Brahmins because of their knowledge, Kshatriyas because of their power, Vaishyas because of their wealth, and Sudras because of their age. So it's a culture of respect that we give. And by giving respect to those persons, you may respect someone who's just an old man and he's a Sudra. But that personality might be Kalidas, one great Sudra in Chaitanya Charitamrita, who's an exalted Vaishnava. And you give respect to him, and he thinks, oh, he's such a humble person. He's giving respect to me. Then you get some ashirbad, you get some blessing from him. So I agree with you that sometimes we see humility, and sometimes it even makes our heart a little distressed. Just like I give the joke oftentimes, you probably heard me do it too many times, where they say, if I come and I say, Lila Purushottam, I think you're the most handsome guy in all of Czech. You're definitely the most learned. You're the best kirtan leader. You have the most wonderful wife. You have the best garden. You have the best this and that. And I glorify you like anything. And then I say, by the way, can I borrow some money from you? And how does that make you feel? You feel like you want to go jump in the river or something and take a bath. You feel like you don't want to see my face anymore. But, he's not, everything I just said is false. It's wrong. So when we see false humility, it doesn't make us inspired. But I would suggest that just like when we see a small child wanting to lead kirtan, but they can't sing in tune, or they can't play the instruments properly or something, but still we encourage them, or they make some drawing or something. You deal with kids all the time, and you take that drawing, which looks like you know, someone on drugs or did some crazy thing or something, right? And you see, that is such a wonderful picture. It's so good. And what you're appreciating, it's not false on your part. Because you're trying to encourage the good quality in the child. And in the child, you see some good quality. It may be false in a way. The child doesn't really own that. The child's not a good artist. The child's a terrible artist. But you're saying that to encourage them. So you feel some pleasure with that. So similarly, when we should feel the same way when we see someone speak in a proper, respectful way, we may recognize that that's just false humility. And it doesn't attract us. And because it doesn't attract us, we're not going to let them into our heart. It's not a big mental endeavor. It's just natural. I'm not going to let that person into my heart very closely because I see they want to just try to borrow money from me. And that's the only reason they're acting in a humble, respectful way. But at the same time, that's nice. We can encourage them, but that's a nice picture you tried to draw, like a child. But and then for ourselves, we should be looking for something which is real. But the problem again is that our heart is so covered over that we can't see anything real in our heart. So we need sometimes to do some serious excavation. When you want to dig a well or a lake, you have a nice property that you want to make a lake on your property, you can go out there with a shovel and you can use the shovel. And someone can say, Prabhu, why don't you hire a crane or whatever it is to clean? And you can say, well, Prabhupada didn't like that. I'm going to use the oxen and I'm going to use a shovel and dig that thing out. But the fact is that if you bring a crane in 1 hour or something, you can dig the thing out very, very quickly, when something would take you many, many days. So in a similar way, if we're associating with sadhu and we get the sadhu's mercy, and that sadhu's mercy may come in the form of harsh words, as Srila Bhakti-siddhanta says, or it may come just in a glance, or it may just come by their behavior. They may be chastising us and pointing out our deficiencies, or they may just be, we just may see their exalted position. And then in comparing ourselves to them, then we realize all of a sudden, my God, how bad I am. So that's like the big excavating machine coming in compared to our little shovel. We're trying to do something on our own. And just one word, the sadhu can excavate very, very deeply. And it pierces our heart.
Painting.
You like birds and things like that. You might like that analogy.
I was also surprised with this. Thank you for the answer. It was helpful, nice. I was really surprised with this Bhakti Sandarbha. Actually, there was a sentence in one of the verses that you from this 270 Anucheda, that humility is nature of Kali Yuga. I was really surprised with that because we don't see much of it around. Maybe for Vaishnavas, it's like, oh, we are Kali Yuga creatures and we are so disqualified for what would be a real standard for pure devotional service. In that sense, one can relate to it. But to claim like humility is the nature of Kali Yuga sounds.
It's a natural quality of Kali Yuga for someone who's living in reality. And what do we know about reality? Reality is something you have to speak with someone who lives in reality. We want to hear from Shastra. We wrote about that in our last magazine, and if you read that, what is madness? What is insanity? When someone doesn't recognize reality and they think they're God, or they think they're Napoleon or something. But then what is philosophy? Philosophy means questioning reality. So many philosophers are also madmen. So then what really is reality? Reality is that thing which is described in Shastra and is explained to us by Sadhu Guru. But the problem, according to Brahma-vivarta Purana, again described in Bhakti Sandarbha, is that Hridayam Malinam, that when our heart is malina, is dirty, then we don't appreciate Sadguru, we don't appreciate Sadshastra, and we don't have Sadbuddhi. We don't have good intelligence because we're so covered over. And so in that sense, that's also a symptom of Kali Yuga. That's a real, you may say it's the more general symptom of Kali Yuga is pride. But here, my understanding of what Jiva Goswami is saying here is that otherwise it doesn't make sense, is that someone who's living in reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
because in the next verse he says, let me read the Sanskrit, Kalocha dinatvam, that humility is natural in Kali Yuga, or dinatva is the symptom of Kali Yuga, yata Brahma-vivarte, and that's stated in Brahma-vivarta Purana. And then he gives this verse, Ata Kalo Tapa Yoga Vidya Yagyadika Kriyaha, gives a long list of different activities. And he says that in Kali Yuga, you can't do these things. Even if you're a very qualified person, you can't do that. So that list indicates what? It indicates someone who has some education. I may want to study Mridanga. I may want to play Mridanga. And sometimes we've seen that sometimes people, they think they're a great Mridanga player. And they just, oh my God. I remember one devotee, I went to him after the kirtan. I said, Prabhu, why don't you just play the same beat as everybody else? And he said, no. We should all play different beats, and it makes a different kind of sound. And then, oh my God, I couldn't say anything. So any symptom, any system of knowledge, the symptom that you're beginning to learn something is the first thing is you realize, I don't know anything. You may think I know all about mathematics because I know 2 + 2 = 4. But then you hear about trigonometry and calculus and things. And it's beyond you. You can't understand those things, but you begin to hear them described. And so therefore, sometimes when you go to the university, one of the first things they do is they just crush you. Mm-hmm. And they give these intense classes with all these technical terms and things which are way over your head, just to crush your false ego and make you realize and wake up that I really don't know. I don't know anything. And so that's a symptom of someone who's really studying, learning Mridanga. They realize, I don't know Mridanga. That's the first thing you know. And you learn a little bit about who is a good Mridanga player. They know tals, and they can play many different tals, and they know what's an appropriate tal and appropriate time and like that. So that I see that inherent in this verse, that Jiva Goswami is saying, again, Kalo Chadinatvam, that the symptom of Kali Yuga is dinatva. And then this is described in Brahma-vivarta Purana, and he gives this verse speaking about tapo, yoga, vidya, yagya, kriya, doing all these different sacrifices and things. It indicates someone who has some knowledge. So when you have that knowledge in Kali Yuga, then you realize, I can't do these things. I had enough knowledge about doing homa and things to realize I can't do homa. I can't chant the mantras and things. I can't do it. I have that much knowledge, which is not very much knowledge. Is that helpful?
Yeah. The important for me is that line of thought that you must be willing to be in reality, because otherwise you might be dinatva, you might be very fallen, but still, being like what Prabhupada usually uses the terms like false prestige, false pride, meaning like it's not actual, but still you are in a fallen position, but you can still think that you are something else than you are. So as soon as you're willing to accept the reality, then this fallen state of yourself will bring you to humility naturally, and then one could harmonize this sentence that the humility is nature of Kali Yuga, because we are dinatva, because we are false.
I mean, there may be, he may mean something else. I haven't seen any commentary on this, but this is what I humbly see in the verse.
It's thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Anybody else would like to share anything? Gaurnitai Prabhu. And then Siddha Hari Prabhu. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for your kindness to share all this vast knowledge, big knowledge. So I'm really happy, and I will definitely try to use what you advised by the Shastra. So I liked very much this part when you explained the 3 ways of cultivating humility. Because yes, as Lila Purushita Prabhu says, that the words of humility in the Western world is not really clear, not really we understand what does it mean in our life and how proud I am, we are. So we really have to have a revolution in our life of thinking of revolution of thinking, because otherwise we cannot chant really properly. Otherwise we cannot step forward. Just we remain a practitioner devotee who, living in the community, but it's not really experiencing the sweet nectar of the holy name. So thank you very much for that one. And I remind your conversation with Lila Purushottam Prabhu remind me to the first reading which I read. The first book was Sri Ishopanishad, and to the Ishopanishad, Srila Prabhupada put this introduction, where not he put, but the author of the Ishopanishad put, where Srila Prabhupada explained the 4 defects of the human nature. And then he told, yes, because of that, if we are really intelligent person, we turn to the Vedas. So I realized that all my devotional life, I was missing that point. Because, I joined in, not so young, and I found that reading the Shastra or learning the Shastra is very difficult, remembering the Shastra. But still, at the point of 68, I realized that still that is the only way to turn my consciousness from selfish vision of I know, or at least I can figure out something about the reality, or to turn to the Shastra and humbly seek the Shastra in whatever decision I have to make. First, have to find Sadhguru Shastra, what they are saying, and then adjust that into your life. So this could be a turning point in my life, that maybe in one day when I really appreciating the Shastra, then I become humble. Otherwise, not.
Yeah, we can also be proud of our humility. Proud of our apparent humility, our show of humility.
Can I have one question? And about the first verse, the verse which you gave, that the ocean of illusion where wares in the form of the lust are trying to swallow me. So it's speaking about the lust, and Narottam Das Thakur is praying to the Lord, please Lord, glance towards me and protect me. So as you know, many times I've brought into the picture the Manashiksha of Raghunath Das Goswami. There he's praying to the lost devotees. So what do you think, what is the difference when we pray to the Lord, who is the ocean of mercy, and if we pray to the devotees of the Lord? What is the difference of the two mood of the prayers? Can you say something about that?
Well, prayers are an individual thing. And of course, it always depends on the individual. One person offers prayers because they want something. They want some money, or they want this or that. But we want to try to understand the mood of prayer of our great Mahajans. And so they may generally have one of two moods. They chant Hare Krishna and pray to Krishna to please their guru. Tate Krishna Bhaji Kori Guru Sevan. I'm chanting Hare Krishna, but really what I'm trying to do is to please my guru. And my Guru Dev is more pleased when I chant Hare Krishna than when I chant Jai Guru Dev, Jai Guru Dev, Jai Guru Dev. Although he may encourage a small child like devotee in some ways with that kind of devotion, it's better that we chant Hare Krishna. The second mood is that I worship the devotees because I know it pleases Krishna. And we see there's other Vaishnavas who have that kind of mood, like Kalidas, we were mentioning. He would go and he would take the remnants of all the different Vaishnavas in West Bengal and Orissa. And for him, worshiping the devotees is everything. Prayer is something which, prarthana means an appeal. That's one of the general types of prayers. It's something which comes from the heart. It's something which comes deep within us. We learn to practice that in the same way that an artist learns to paint by going to the university, and they tell them this is a circle, this is how you make eyes, this is how you do this and that. And they teach them craftsmanship. It's not art, it's craftsmanship. Art means to express yourself through a particular medium. And they don't really have anything to express yet. All they know is circles and ears and eyes and all like that. And sometimes even they may be an expert painter, an expert craftsman, and the eyes and ears and all those things look nice. But because the painting doesn't speak to you, they don't have anything to say maybe. There's nothing in their heart to speak. Therefore, there is no art. So prayer means something which is coming from our heart. And we have to look deeply into our heart for that. And that prayer also will come through association with Sadhu Guru and other different Vaishnavas. When we see their feelings, when we render service to Gurudev, then we get some kata ruchi, we get some taste. And that also means that we get some feeling in our heart and we can understand that. And that begins again with reality. That begins when we begin to understand our position and we can deal with it. Is that helpful, Prabhu? Nice thing. I miss your Sangha type, Prabhu. What's your plans? You're going to stay in India forever and ever now? You're just going to be a Brajbani? You threw your passport away in Radhakund and just going to stay there?
That's interesting that I am planning to go to Hungary for 2 months, but maybe just at that time when you return to India. But as you mentioned, this governor retreat, if you are there, I registered for that.
Okay, I hope I see you. Otherwise, I hope that our plane will fly underneath your plane.
Yeah, don't crash because of the great desire to associate with me. Please don't do that.
We had lunch with Shiva Ramaraj here in Budapest a few months ago, and he was telling us how that when you fly on certain flights, the plane goes right over the temple. And you can see the temple from the plane as you're going over. So
can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
This motive of big whale and the last. So I remember of one of your class when you explained Pradyumna's situation. So Pradyumna is the last personification, and he was swallowed by a fish. So the last as a whale following you, and the last is followed by a fish. So is this any background that the last is like a big whale? You don't see how big it is, and so you cannot do anything against. So what is this motivation of the fish swallowing the last?
well, in the case of the story Pradyumna, who was swallowed by the fish, Pradyumna doesn't represent lust. Pradyumna is Cupid. And then there's a close connection between Cupid and lust. Cupid inspires lust. And so when the ladies, even Krishna's wives, our acharyas say, saw him, they had some conjugal desires because he reminded them of Krishna. In their case, they're exalted devotees, and they had that desire. It wasn't a fault on their part. It wasn't a sick thing like when a mother has some desire for the son. But in their case, it was because it reminded them of Krishna. And to use the example you were just giving, the fish, in this case, swallows us because the fish is attracted. Again, the fish was attracted to eat Cupid and to try to enjoy him. In a similar way, in the material world, when someone tries to enjoy with a woman, it's like trying to eat someone, in the sense that how can you enjoy their body? The thing, you really can't. It's not possible with the soul. The propensity, the facility that we have for enjoyment it's not going to work there. So it's like we're trying to eat that thing, and we're not successful with it. That's what comes to my mind right now.
That's fantastic.
Where are you at now, Gonita? Are you back in Mayapur or are you in Vrindavan still?
I'm in Mayapur, yes.
Okay. Okay, we're thinking about you there, taking bath and chanting and being in the kirtans and things, waiting for your Guru Maharaj. I hope to see you sometime soon. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Siddha Hari Prabhu, can you share something with us? And then Natalia.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, I wanted to share an appreciation and then a question. First, I want to appreciate, thank you for bringing this Pariprashna back. We were missing it for last so many weeks because of your crazy travels and ecstatic preaching. I was thinking, like, sometimes, this topic of humility I've heard a number of times, but every time we hear it, and again, your presentation was very unique and also very beautifully presented. I was thinking sometimes we wonder that how long we have to hear before this quality can develop. But then I was thinking that if you're trying to, training for an athlete, you have to take nutrients, and you don't just take one time a vitamin or one time, protein. You take it daily and regularly. Similarly, there's a regular need to revisit these topics again. Sorry, there's a need to regularly revisit this topic again so that it can be refreshed. And that's what was my experience, that hearing these things from you today, reminded me of the essence of good chanting, which is having a humble heart and a humble mood. So thank you for bringing those topics out. And your speaking was very much relevant to the situation I'm right now in. Some things are happening, and I feel like you're speaking something which is very much coming from Krishna. So thank you for speaking on that. And then I also wanted to offer a comment and a question that, as you were mentioning the example of Fakir Mohan Prabhu, how he was so humble and he was so endearing because of that humility. Like, although he was so knowledgeable, but he always had this beautiful jewel of humility. I noticed that many devotees, they are naturally very humble. Like, from the get-go, from day one, they have this amazing quality of humility. So that it seems like something you gain from your birth. It doesn't seem like you can really cultivate it, because those devotees who were humble 10 years ago, they are still very humble, and they're actually much more humble than ever before. I mean, they seem much more humble, and it's something, it looks like that you really can't cultivate. So, sometimes I wonder, is that something that can be cultivated at all? Humility as a quality? It seems like something it's like a nature you gain practically from your environment, from a long time, like maybe decades or like, whole lifetime.
You live in Michigan, and you know what it's like if you go out on the street and you try to tell people this is a really miserable world. If you go to the hash bash and you try to tell people this is a really lousy world, they're going to say, no, man, look, there's all these beautiful girls, there's this nice marijuana, there's nice movies and drinking and this and that. And they don't, because they're not living in reality. And they can't look at reality. They can't bear it. So some people are able to look at that. They're able to see that in a natural way. And they're naturally more humble. They can see and understand their position. they're not insane. I read a beautiful statement recently from your Guru Maharaj. Jayapataka Maharaj was saying that charity begins at home, famous saying. He said, therefore, we should work to make our devotees strong, because charity begins at home. And I was thinking about that comment in line of what you're saying, that charity begins at, we want to make the devotees strong. We make them strong by reading Bhagavad Gita, by understanding how Krishna is behind everything, by understanding the material world and how miserable it is, and that, which to some people, to someone who's a mad person, to someone who's a narcissist, sounds very, very depressing. But it's reality. And reality, no matter how depressing it is always preferable to illusion, no matter how cheerful it is. So we can cultivate that humility by gaining knowledge. I can, when I first started playing mridanga, maybe, and I don't play mridanga very well, I might have thought, well, I'm the best mridanga player in the Los Angeles temple, at least when nobody else is in the kirtan. I might have thought I was really something. But then when I got around Pushpadanta Prabhu, or I got around later on Gopal Prabhu and other mridanga players, I see, oh my God, this person's a real mridanga player. And I learned enough about mridanga to live in reality and accept that. But some people, recently we were in Lithuania, and there's one young devotee, he's a friend of mine actually, and he was insisting to play the mridanga during my kirtan. And I kind of just was ignoring him, like I didn't see. He had the mridanga in his hand, he was wanting, because I don't like the way he plays mridanga. He doesn't know how. But he doesn't, and he's so illiterate, he's so uneducated that he doesn't even know how bad he is. He thinks he's a great. So the symptom of real education is that there's some humility. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu.
You've been okay, Siddhati? I was thinking about you the last couple of days, and I was wanting to contact you something. This machine is working really, really good. And I'm just so grateful. I think about you all the time. It's a fantastic, fantastic tool. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
And Natalia, do you want to share something?
Yes. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, everything actually, especially, and it is just circumstances now like this, that from many places I hear that our focus, like by any means, should be focused on glorifying the Lord, and just everything else is just disturbing. It is from retreats of Sanatan Goswami, retreat of Bhakti-candrika Goswami, and also from some, I was listening to one Christian, like Orthodox singer, some days, last days, and she's singing also, like in every circumstances, especially in grief, when you are lost, your only way is to glorify the Lord. And when we and also I was thinking now that pride and also grief, they both are like form of intoxication. It's feeling like we are going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper if we are focusing on our ego, on our grief, on something on us. We are going deeper into illusion, and it is intoxifying. But when we are glorifying Lord, it is really like the only truth. And when we are doing it, I had an experience like in very tough situation. When I was thinking I lost everything in that moment. I was thinking I had an idea in my head. I started to repeat 64 qualities of Krishna loudly, and without any hope, without anything. Just I could not go deeper into into suffering. It was, and I found I was looking for some way out of this suffering mind. That I started to remind these 64 qualities and say out loudly, and okay, I had some realizations, and I had some strengths and just some idea what to do, and it is and this Orthodox singer, she's singing like, you just try, you will feel the difference. Just try to glorify the Lord. When He comes, you will see like, the truth, like His compassion, His quality. When He is near, you will feel Him only when you are focusing on Him. Yeah. And also thank you for this quotation about not using names, Lord's names, Hare Krishna, for greeting others. I was looking for some proof, and I felt always like this is not right somehow to, but I could not. Now I have at least some proof for that.
The general system is that they write Jai Shishi Guru Garanga or Jai Shishi Gandharva Giridhari or something in the top, meaning just we want to begin by glorifying the Lord. But when we say Hare Krishna, then the tendency Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said is that we may think, well, I'm an instructor in the holy name. And there's some danger in that. I really appreciated your comment you were saying about how pride is intoxicating. And Raghunath Das Goswami in the first verse was Govardhan Basa Prarthana Dasakam. He brings that out. He speaks about Giriraj, and he says, Pratihata Madhajista Ganda Dev and the Garba, that Devendra, Indra, the king of the Devas, he had this pride, this Garba. And Giriraj Pratihata smashed that. And what is that pride? He describes three types, Madha, Drista, and Udanda. Udanda means that to raise your hand or something, to chastise someone. Drista means to be impudent, just like if one of your children comes to you one day and says, excuse me, Natalia, I just want to tell you the way you did this. And you would go, what are you? You're my son, you're my daughter. You're calling me by my name? And you're coming and chastising. It's very impudent. It's not the proper position of that person. So Indra had that udanda, that type of pride. He had this drista, and he had mada. And mada means intoxication. He was completely intoxicated with his position due to his pride. And that's the nature of pride, is that we can't see how fallen we are, how useless we really actually are. It's a very, very sad thing. And that's why also it's generally not something that a wise person looks for in service in the form of management. A wise person generally doesn't do that. They'd rather, my Guru Maharaj told us a story that Srila Prabhupada told him that I want you to become guru and initiate disciples. And my Guru Maharaj became very upset. He said, Prabhupada, I don't want to be the head. I want to be the tail. And Prabhupada told him, no, I want you to be the head. So you must do this. So a wise person doesn't want to have a big position like that. Anyway, thank you. Anybody else with anything? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap it up today.
I lost today's session, but so I think
Okay. So many different. Ishwari Prema, nice to see you here. Brajaraj Gopal Prabhu, you have something you want to share?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for this katha. I think I was waiting for this. I'm reminded of this anecdote where this is shared by Haribalas Prabhu, who is based in Seattle now, and he was with Srila Prabhupada, and he asked him, what is the definition of humility? And Srila Prabhupada said to consider oneself like so small, but realizing that we can become so big with Krishna's mercy. So devotee feels they're insignificant, but not so insignificant that Krishna cannot make them so significant. So that is, I was reminded of that anecdote. And I really connected with that idea that those who are in reality are humble. I see sometimes in my life that I pretend to be a devotee. Oh, I'm chanting so many rounds and I'm reading so much. But then, when I get down and do some seva, and then that seva, especially if it is little challenging and, it's a big goal, some outreach, and it gets crushed in front of my eyes, like there's failure, which is that has completely crushed my sense of false prestige. At that moment, I feel, wow, this is so, I feel so insignificant. And in those moments, I find that I can actually take shelter, like just when I'm really practical, when I'm really doing something real and I feel the crushing weight of failure, then I feel I can really connect with Krishna. Those tears make so much more sense. Prabhuji, I just had this one question. I felt I probably can count on my fingers the number of times I felt like really like desperate in my prayer, and that's usually after something has collapsed in my life, relationship, some seva or something. But what I find and I feel very guilty about this, those moments come, and then I go in front of the worshipable lordships here, Shri Radha Madan Mohan, and I cry internally, and then I feel some shelter, but then I go back and do the same thing that I was doing before. I feel like, oh, I received some shelter, so I'm safe now. And then I go back. So the whole process that I went through, I did not learn from it. So I feel disappointed and guilty. I'm wondering how we can move beyond getting stuck like that.
Well, first of all, if you remember, that means that it's helping some. Because you remember, I did this before, and that's the first step. That sooner or later, then I'm going to stop doing it. If I choose to live in reality, no matter how unbearable it is, and that's why the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is Bishad Yoga, that it's poisonous. I have to accept the bish, the poison of reality. And then we can really cry. And that's as you're saying, those are tears of reality. Kunti Devi, she prays in a bizarre way. People would think it's bizarre. Vipada Shantu Tasasvat, bring it on. Give me all the misery and suffering. Not because we want misery and suffering, but because that misery and suffering brings her to Krishna. Your comments reminded me also of the statement Rupa Goswami gives in the second wave of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where he defines what is dainya. We're speaking today a lot about humility, and he speaks about what is dainya, and he says there's three causes for it. Dukkha trasa aparadha anurjitam tadinata, that dukkha, when we're unhappy, and like you said, I've been smashed in this way and that way. If I'm not smashed, if everything's going really good, and they want to make me the president of the United States, and I'm a multi-billionaire, and I have a big castle in Florida, then I think I'm like an incarnation or something. I make little cards or something with pictures of me like that, make myself into a cartoon character. But when there's dukkha, when there's some unhappiness, that forces us to deal with reality. And trust means there's some fear that, oh, I'm afraid someone's going to put me in prison now. I was the president of the United States before. Now I'm going to maybe have to go to prison. That causes some humility. And the third is aparada jaya, that some sense that I've committed offense. And especially I've committed offense to the devotees. When we feel like that, when we recognize it, oh, we're going to, probably for Janmashtami in Goloka Dham, we're going to speak about, let me look it up here in a second. I forgot I had a cute title for it. What was it, Krishna?
Digestive problems.
Yeah, the digestive problems of Baka and Keshi. They had some digestive problems. They couldn't digest what was being given there. And so when sometimes as devotees, we get some digestive problem and we realize that I've been acting like in a certain way, like a big person and that, but all of a sudden we realize I've been acting like an ass, like this big horse running into the Vaishnava Sangha, and I've committed so many offenses. And then aparada jaya, anorjitam dadinata, Rupa Goswami says that gives birth then to humility. Then we realize, oh, what have I done with the Vaishnavas? Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Thank you so much. It's really appreciate it.
Hare Krishna. Anybody else with anything? Krishna Khan?
Could you just kindly explain? You made a statement that you quoted something. I don't remember what you quoted. Just before that, blessed is the person who is under everybody's feet. That my power is fully shown in your weakness. I don't think I got this.
Okay. Let me look that up real quick. That was Saint Francis. Yeah, he says that yeah, here it is. Blessed is the servant who does not consider himself any better when he's praised and exalted by people than when he's considered worthless, simple, and looked down upon.
It's so beautiful. But the previous, what you said before that my power is
that's from the Bible. That's in Corinthians, and that's a statement from Jesus. And Jesus said, my power is fully shown in your weakness. And that's exactly what Narottam Das Thakur is saying when he's praying that Gauranga Karuna Koro Amidina Hinajani, I'm so very, very fallen. And he says that, what is it? Jaridoya Nakori Patita Dekiya, that you may not want to give me your mercy because you see how fallen I am. Then Patita Pavana Nama Kishara Lagiya. How can we call you Patit Pavan if you don't give mercy to me? Because I'm the most fallen person. So this is what Christ is saying in Corinthians, that my power is fully shown in your weakness. Without our weakness, we can't see. If there was no person who's patit, who's fallen, then how can the Lord be patit pavan? So ubayor sambandha e patita pavan. Haridas Thakur and Harinam Chintamani says that thing. This is our connection. Ubayor sambandha e. This is our connection between you and me. Amita abanda, amita adama, tumi adamatarana. I'm very fallen, and you're the deliverer of the fallen. This is it's the same statement from Corinthians. Okay, thank you.
Maybe just one more thing about Madaigat.
Okay.
I love that. Just to understand that I have offended so many people, I don't even know all that I have offended. Like Rupa Goswami, he didn't know he offended that Vaishnava, and therefore, he just sat there and offered pranams to everyone. And I was thinking that, that's how.
Speak loud.
That's how I need to be. That's how I want to be.
That's what it means to be a Vaishnava. And if we think that being a Vaishnava means that you have to work to becoming a GBC, or becoming a guru, or traveling preacher or sannyasi or this or that, you have some position in the institution, it means you don't really understand anything about bhakti. What we want in bhakti is we just want bhakti itself. That's all.
I really like your answer to Srila Sanatan, and also what you said to Malisi that it's good to be afraid to be proud.
Yeah. Wow. Ishwari Prema, what did you think of that poem about the dirt? Did you catch that? Ishwari Prema is a famous poet. I don't know if you could understand or appreciate that. Was that okay?
Yeah, very nice poem. Thank you so much for your association, for wonderful Qatar, for possibility to participate here, and this a wonderful poem that I would like to read again.
Okay, I'll post that in to our, yeah, I know. I'll post it into our WhatsApp group. But Leela Purushottam Prabhu, I'm going to ask you, he says he found the song on YouTube. On our WhatsApp group, why don't you post a link to the song? And then I'll also post the words to it. Really good.
Yes, so
Poetry is so good.
like,
Poetry is like the heart of a community. It's the heart of a civilization. And that's why we should always appreciate the poets. Because, and what is the value of a poet? It's art because you're able to express something to someone else through some words or something. Whereas an artist that in the form of a painter expresses those feelings, shares those feelings through a painting. A poet does it through some words. And I really like this particular poem about dirt. Let's see. There it is.
yes, really amazing. And this topic also very, very important because we can do everything and have service and chant holy name, but without this humility, everything can be spoiled. So, so even it is like a practical class from the one point of view, very practical to understand. But what practical I experience, that it's sometimes more easy to try to be humble in temple or with some devotees when we're not seeing every day, but with people who we see every day, like with family members, it's sometimes more difficult. Family life, it's more difficult to be humble, and I understand that it's like really big lessons, but how to see that the family life is like real devotional service.
Yeah, the problem with family life, you have a child and you start thinking that I'm like God because of this child's going to listen to me. I'm instructing this child, and therefore you're not dealing with reality. You know, so we have to be very, very careful. And that's why we want to always try to associate with senior Vaishnavas. It's so very, very important. Otherwise, we can't really appreciate. I want to share with you another poem. You're inspiring me. Can I share a poem with you guys? This is a poem about humility.
Yes, yes.
And this is a famous poem written by a Christian lady named Joyce Kilmer. And she's speaking about why trees are superior to her. Now, that's a pretty humble statement to think that a tree is superior to me. And how is it she says that? Oops, it's not what I wanted. Let's find it here. Sometimes it's a little hard. There it is. Okay. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. So that's reality. This poem also, it's not by a great devotee, but we can appreciate it, and it can speak to our hearts even as devotees, that this lady has such a realization. She can see that, you know, poems are made by fools like me, We can think, and you may know, Ishvai Prema is one of the most famous poets in Lithuania, some people say, I've heard. We can become proud that I'm a big poet and I'm invited like this. But here she's saying, poems are made by fools like me. You know, I'm but only God can make a tree. So God is greater than me. It's reality that we can appreciate. Okay. Okay.
Jai.
Thank you. I
Thank you
like
so much.
when I get around, we always want to try to share some poems or something. I guess. So I'll post that. I'll paste that poem about the dirt, the housewife's lament. You'll like that. That's good for you also. You're a poet, and you're also a mother and a housewife, so you can relate. Especially in your house. Their house is like a construction site. When we visited there, and you talk about dirt. I mean, there's some parts of their house which still don't have a floor, and it's just dirt. It's very, very difficult place to keep clean, I think, isn't it? Anyway, okay. So thank you all so much. If anybody can make it somehow to check for the program on Balaram's appearance day with Leela Purushottam, we'd really love to see everybody there. And we had some idea, I don't know if it'll ever happen, especially because our schedule's going crazy in different ways. We had some talk. At one point, we were speaking with Mangala Prabhu and with Leela Purushottam about maybe doing some program in Lithuania. If we don't go back to India or something, maybe that'll happen. I'm not promising anything, but that would be cool. Get together with everybody. Anyway, thank you so much. I will see. You can look at the link that Leela Purushottam Prabhu posted, and I'll post the words here also. Otherwise, he just says, Leela Purushottam Prabhu said, we should all just fake it till you make it. I like that. Vancha kalpatarubhischa kripa sindhubhye vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo